Well, as always, on Thursday mornings, we are proud here at KEOS Community Radio to feature news and information from the Bryan Independent School District. And with me this morning, as usual, is Public Outreach Officer Dr. Hugo Ibarra. Good morning, Dr. Ibarra. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you, DJ Lance?
I'm doing great. So we have a guest this morning, but any general announcements that you want to cover before we move on to our guest?
Yes, we definitely have a very important guest. I'm glad that Ginger Carrabine, our Chief of Staff, is here with us. But before we go ahead and before we start with the interview, I wanted to remind everyone that we have a special event this Friday at Rudder High School. We have Trunk or Treat at 5, from 5 to 8, basically, and the information is on the Bryan ISD Facebook page. But the main thing, the one thing that is different, is that we have a special feature from the Rudder High School Choir. They will be showing Coco. We're going to bring the...
It's a drive-in,
It's a
right?
drive-in, yes, sir. It's
and there is an admission charge per car, I believe?
$15.
Okay.
There's only 50 tickets left.
Oh, really?
$15 per car.
So you had to get those online just like the athletic tickets?
Correct.
Okay.
And I was asking about the size of the screen. I'm thinking, is this a truck? And it's a 20 by 40 screen that Suddenlink is sponsoring.
Okay, so it's a pretty decent. It's not like a real drive-in, but it's pretty good size.
It's pretty good size.
And that is the price for everybody you can fit in the car, and you don't even have to put people in the trunk. Right. Those of us who remember drive-ins may understand that reference. But
no, I've seen it. So hey, as long as it's not moving, you can pack that car.
Okay, great. Well, slow down as you go through the gate. But definitely looking forward to the Trunk or Treat event. Now, who all is involved in putting that event on? Is that the students that'll be doing that, or is it staff, or both?
As far as I know, is Rudder High School Choir coordinated with I would think, I don't know, the students for sure.
Okay.
The teacher. And then sponsored with Suddenlink.
Okay, so it's not just sponsored by them. They're actually putting the event on.
Correct.
Okay, awesome. Well, that's a good alternative to going door to door for those who might be concerned about COVID and wanting to stay safe. So that's a great opportunity. Anything else? No, sir. That's it. That's all we have regarding general announcements, and we can... All right. Why don't you introduce our special guest this morning?
Well, as last week we were talking about, 2 weeks ago, we had the privilege of interviewing Dr. Whitbeck, our superintendent.
Our superintendent, yes.
And I remember towards the end of the interview that we were talking about how energetic she is and that it's very hard to keep up with her. Mm-hmm. Well, I think that our guest is perhaps that person who is able to keep up and get things done. Energetic.
Oh, you think so? Well, let's put her to the test. She's looking pretty energetic.
Yeah. This is Mrs. Ginger Carrabine. She is Bryan ISD's Chief of Staff. And,
all right.
I'll let you take it.
Good morning, Ms. Carrabine. Tell us, we always start off by learning a little bit about our guests. So tell us where you've been, how you wound up here in Bryan, and a little bit about your background and how you came into education and how you specifically came to be here at Bryan Independent School District.
Thank you so much. Good morning. First, I want to start with a huge thank you and appreciation for you inviting me to join you this morning. And for all
it's our pleasure. Thank you for taking the time.
Well, and also for every week helping us to shine a light on all the great things happening in Bryan ISD.
And there's a lot, as I'm learning.
Yes, we have been very busy. I guess busy is an understatement. So again, thank you so much. Well, let me tell you a little bit about my journey. I've actually started my 4th year in Bryan ISD. I'm a 29-year veteran educator. And I guess what brought me to Bryan was I actually worked with Dr. Whitbeck in a previous district. And she joined the district in 2017, and a few short months later, I followed her here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was noticing a similarity in the background. So did she recruit you, or did you seek her out when you saw that she was here?
I think it was mutual. I have great respect for Dr. Whitbeck, and as the community can see, her actions speak loudly.
They do. They definitely do.
Incredible leader. She's added tremendous value to this community, and I'm so happy to be a part of that. But as far as my journey to Bryan, it's been pretty exciting. We actually bought a home here, moved here right away. My only regret is not getting here sooner. I feel like it's the the best of all worlds, a small town community with everything you need. It's really awesome to be so close to Texas A&M University and all that offers. And it's close enough that I can run back into Houston or Austin or Dallas. So
you still have family there?
I do.
Okay.
I have 3 wonderful children. One that lives and works in Houston, so I can get back to visit him. I have one that lives and works in Dallas, so I could get to him pretty quickly. And have a daughter that just graduated college, so she's actually here in Bryan with us, looking for a job. So
okay,
it's really
she's in a good place to be looking for a job. But
yes. Graduating from college in the middle of a pandemic is not ideal.
No,
but, she's getting through it and working on things as we speak.
All right. Well, we're glad you made it here, even if it took you a while. So welcome. Glad you're part of a community. So tell us now, what exactly does the chief of staff do at an independent school district? We've heard the term chief of staff applied to governmental agencies, and so I imagine it's kind of similar, but maybe not. So what do you do?
Well, in this district in particular, I wear many hats. I report directly to the superintendent, and my goal is to position her for success and support her efforts to meet the needs of our students in Bryan ISD. In particular, I'm involved with strategic planning, district improvement planning. I am involved with a multitude of projects depending on what's at hand. Most recently, I led the 2020 bond steering process. I currently lead the 2019 bond oversight process. I've been very involved, unfortunately, because of the pandemic with the COVID-19 response and the Return to Learn plan. And lots of, just a multitude of projects, including district calendar development. And I lead many different committees. And in my spare time, I oversee the directors of construction, so all the construction and development in the district, our maintenance department, career and technical education, and our fine arts program. So I feel like I live in the best of both worlds. I get to work with all the people on the teaching and learning side of the house, as well as the maintenance and operations side of the house. So
it sounds like you've got a lot of plate spinning there. And you said something that I picked up on. You are, in addition to I guess writing herd over the 2020 bond, you are coordinating the 2019 bond. And so your function of oversight of that, what does that entail? Are you having to actually make sure that money is spent where it was supposed to be spent? Is that administrative, or is that hands-on? Are you actually going out inspecting work or seeing what has been done with that bond money?
Actually, all of that. It was very important to us when we began the journey with the 2 bonds, 1 vision process. The first part of that was the 2019 bond. And I can go into more detail in a moment, but it was important to us to ensure that the promises made were promises kept. We wanted to be as transparent as we possibly could. So we actually formed a committee, a very comprehensive committee. We've got some community members, we've got some parents, we've got staff members, and we do exactly what you described. We meet. We've actually met 6 times just to get our head wrapped around it. And at each meeting, we talk about what are the projects and what is the status. We look at expenditures, timelines. Are we coming in as expected? We look at the budget, of course, to see if we're at budget, under budget, or over budget. And then we all weigh in. Because we've met 6 times and we've very aggressively approached the 2019 bond projects, I'm very proud to say that we're nearly complete. We took care of business.
Sorry, does that mean you're ahead of schedule on those projects, or you're just staying on track?
I would say that we're actually on track or a little ahead of schedule, and we actually came in at under budget on many of the projects. So the committee,
that's great news.
The oversight committee, actually another function of their role is to advise us should we have any money left over. It's always the goal to have a little.
Should you have money left over?
always.
I like the way you put that.
Always goal.
The reason why I wanted to touch on that is one of the things that I've heard people say is, "Wow, didn't we just have a bond election? Don't they already have a bond? What do they need more for?" So, talk a little bit, if you could, about the 2 bonds, 1 vision, I guess, project or initiative.
Okay, I'm glad you asked that question, and I can tell you exactly how that came about. When the superintendent and I got here in 2017, the first thing you do in any school district, and actually it should be happening year-round, is taking a good look at what's happening with your facilities. Assessment and the needs of your students. So fortunately, when Bryan ISD had a bond back in 2014, they actually conducted a facility assessment in 2013. But
so this goes back a ways.
it goes back. So we, of course, looked at that data, and we knew since it was 2017, we needed to look at where we were at that point in time, especially with priority maintenance, because, there's a lifespan for roofs and chillers and boilers and all those things. So we actually hired a firm that had conducted the original facility assessment to come back out to the district and literally visit every single campus, every single facility we have, and to update the facility assessment and give us a report on where we stood at that point in time. In addition to that, we hired a demographer. We needed to know what was happening with our student enrollment. And more important for the here and now is the projected enrollment. What will that look like over the next 10 years? We also launched some surveys because we wanted to hear from our students and our parents, our staff, and our community at large. So we gathered all of that data, and very early on with the analysis of that data, it was determined that we had some very immediate needs with facilities. The firm that we hired came back and told us the bad news was we had some roofs that needed to be replaced immediately. Maintenance, completely maintenance. We also had some safety and security needs based on the feedback from our community, and that's always a priority for us.
Is that like physical security or alarm systems?
That's exactly right. Upgrading alarm systems.
Fences.
Putting fences around our elementary, key card access.
So they put in the vestibules at the schools for regulating entry into the school?
That, and we put in intrusion-resistant film. So lots of things, because we have a safety and security committee actually in the district. So we tapped into them and we listened to them. Another big thing with safety and security is our school buses. You have to have safe and reliable transportation for our students. So we were out of timeline with the replacement cycle. So based on those immediate needs, we couldn't wait for a more comprehensive, larger bond. We needed to do something right there in that moment.
Right.
So we huddled up as an administrative team. We looked at all this data, our immediate needs, especially maintenance, and we asked the school board to call a $12 million bond. But we declared that...
Which is really kind of a small one, really.
It's a small bond, but it was what was needed. It was a no-fluff, no-frills bond. It was exactly the amount of money we needed to go in and replace those roofs.
Kind of a fix it now.
Fix it now, fix the boiler. We had a boiler that had failed, we had a building that didn't have...
Oh, no heat?
No heat.
Oh, that's not good.
We had issues with air conditioning. Again, we needed to purchase those buses, and all of those things were critically important. So we went into the boardroom and, explained this to our community, and the two bonds, one vision, whole concept was
That's
born.
how it evolved.
It evolved.
Okay.
Yes. So we called the bond election in May of 2019. Fortunately for us, our voters approved it with an 86% approval rating. And the minute that bond passed in May, we regrouped and we continued the process to go forward to the 2020 bond. And I can tell you about that we did not take any of that lightly, because we knew it was going to be a larger bond to address the long-term needs in our district. And because
such as a new campus.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So to begin the journey, we formed what we call a steering committee, a very comprehensive group of people sitting at the table. We tapped students. They sat at the table. We had parents involved. We have teachers, administrators, school board members, community members at large. And we actually met 7 different times. When it was all said and done, they walked off with binders of data. Again, we shared the entire facility assessment report, because at that point in time, it was done. We knew where we stood. We knew what the priorities were at hand. We looked at the demographers' data and the projected enrollment. We looked at the capacity of our buildings, the utilization of our buildings. We looked at that survey data. We listened to our safety and security council. We tapped all the directors in the district to see what were the department specific needs. So all of that was considered. And then from that, the $175 million bond with 5 specific categories was born. And from there, we walked into the school board room, and they called for the May 2020 bond. So we were completely ramped up, ready to roll for that election. And then, of course, we all know what happened in March.
Yes, we do.
Unfortunately, COVID-19,
pushed back a lot of stuff.
We found ourselves in the middle of a pandemic. Everything was moving and changing for public education, and our bond election in May was canceled. So we stepped back from that, and we regrouped, and then we went back in and asked the board to consider calling the election for November. So here we are in November.
Here we are. So it's been a very detailed, very comprehensive review of facilities and needs that led to this. It wasn't just, hey, let's build a new campus and let's spend some money. There was a lot of thought that went into this. So
Yes.
that's a very important point, that not only is there stewardship in hindsight and making sure that the money that has already been approved from a previous bond is properly spent and spent on time and on the appropriate things, but that dovetails, is coordinated with your next bond. And that's where we're at right now. So we're asking voters to say yes to another bond, and that bond is a little bit bigger. So talk a little bit about the money that is involved and the impact that's going to have on the tax rate. That's a very important point to a lot of people who are going to be, many of them have already voted, but maybe going to vote today or tomorrow, voting early, or going to the polls next Tuesday.
Yes, thank you. Well, the $175 million is broken down into different categories. And because safety and security is always our first priority, we have over $8 million dedicated to that. We did a lot of that work with the 2019 bond, but we're not done. We have more fencing, more fire alarm upgrades, more key cards, everything that you can imagine that would enhance safety and security is a line item for this. The big ticket item with $98 million, of course, is our new construction and our additions. The parents, the students, and the staff spoke clearly to us about the need for a third intermediate. While we're doing a great job with the current situation, the voice of the parents was that they would like a smaller population of students. It's quite
in each campus.
Yes, it's a pretty large transition for a student to go out of a small elementary setting and transition into an intermediate setting with 1,000, 1,200 kids. So should we build a third intermediate school, we could balance the enrollment and bring it down to about 800 students, which is much more conducive for grade 5 and 6. And then once they settle into that, they can transition into a larger middle school because they're more mature.
And I'm thinking your daughter, Michaela, she went from
she's at
Johnson,
Jane Long.
And she went from Johnson.
She went from Johnson to Jane Long.
With approximately 450 students.
Well, it was a little under 450 at Johnson, but it's a much larger school that she's in now.
Correct. Yeah, about 1,200 students.
Yes, that's a perfect example. Transitioning out of 400-something students to almost 1,200 students, and you're 10, 11 years old. That's an incredible job.
It's kind of overwhelming, really.
Yes.
And I think back when I was in elementary school went through the 6th grade. So she now is transitioning up to the next step up that I didn't hit until I hit 7th grade. And I went to a junior high school rather than an intermediate school. Back then it was elementary, junior high, and high school. So now we have elementary, intermediate, middle, and high school. But once you hit intermediate school, all of a sudden it's like 3 times the size or more, depending on which one you go to. So I appreciate the fact that we're going to try to have a smaller student population at each of those. As a parent, that's really important to me. You're listening to KEOS College Station. We are visiting with Ginger Carrabine, who is the Chief of Staff for Bryan Independent School District. We're talking about the 2020 school bond, and she's just given us a lot of detail about what that $175 million is going to be spent on. So I'm going to ask if you could think of 3 things, the 3 most important things that are part of that package.
Okay, that's a great question. I would contend that they're all essential.
Well, not that, and I'll give you that point right off the bat.
However.
That doesn't lessen the importance of any of them. But
Yes.
What do you think are the 3 most important?
Well, I would say based on there are 3 that I think are very time sensitive, and that's why I'm going to consider them as most important. One is that brand new intermediate school for the reason that I just described. We want to reduce the student enrollment.
I'm not surprised that's at the top.
That is at the top. If we could reduce the enrollment and get the 3 schools to hover around 800 students, we just believe that would be much more conducive. So for population and capacity reasons, intermediate is definitely one of my top 3. Another that I think is at the top of the list is the rebuild of the maintenance and transportation facility. These facilities were built in the early 1970s, so you can imagine.
And they've got some miles on them.
They've got some miles. They're at the end of their useful life. We've done a great job over the years trying to maintain them, but anything built back in the 70s when it's a metal prefab building, you can imagine it's time. And besides the conditions of their facility, because they were built in the 70s, we've just completely outgrown them.
Well, I was going to say, it was a totally different situation back then.
Completely. So we literally do not have enough room in those facilities to hold the staff and to do the work that we need to do in the district. We're making it work as best we can, but they more than deserve a new facility to increase the capacity and to address their facility condition. And then the third thing that I think is at the top of the list for me is the Stephen F. Austin Middle School Annex renovation. When we built that school, we filled it up pretty quickly, so we already have capacity needs there. We actually already have kids and teachers overflowing into
portables?
Well, it's not portables. We refer to it as the Annex. If you can imagine where the brand new SFA middle school sits, right next to it is the old SFA, which is now the
admin building.
Now the admin building, where there's a portion of that building that was not remodeled. It was left as is because it used to be part of the old school.
Yeah, so it's still sitting there as classrooms.
It's still sitting there as classrooms, and we have kids in them, and we're making it work, and it's safe and it's okay, but it's
not ideal.
It's not up to the standards that the rest of the school has. So the plan for that is to completely gut that part of the building and renovate it and bring it up to speed so we can leverage the capacity there.
Do you know if the annex was part of the original 1930-something building? I mean, the SFA building?
That's my understanding.
Okay,
so that goes back literally to the original Stephen F. Austin High School. That was the high school originally.
Yes.
The Broncos, yes.
Yeah, the Broncos. Wow.
Yes, sir.
Yes, and I think the thought was, that part would never be used, and maybe we just have it set aside for storage, et cetera. But here we are, needing it to put students and staff in. So to me, that's very important. It's definitely a priority.
Okay. So what's going to happen if the bond doesn't pass with those three projects?
Well, if the bond does not pass, we will pause everything. We will reconvene that steering committee.
So there's nowhere else you can go to get those funds.
Not the magnitude.
So saying no is not just going to force you to be a little more inventive with the funds you have. You just don't have them. So these things just aren't going to happen for now.
Correct.
Okay.
We would pause the process. We would reconvene the steering committee and reassess the situation. We would look again at all the categories, the associated costs, and it would be the will of the committee to guide us. I would hope, anticipate that they would want to call for another election, but that wouldn't be until next May. So May of 2021 would be our next chance.
But and the reason why I ask that question and I make that point is I have heard I guess a train of thought or a rationale that they've already got the money that we gave them last year. Here they are asking for more money. We just need to say no for now and make them, spend all that money they've got, make do with what they've got because, they're a school district. They're getting all my tax money. They're the biggest thing on my tax bill every year. I'm already giving them plenty of money. What do they need more money for? Let's just say no and make them spend that money first. But the point is that money is already spent.
Yes, sir. That money's spent on the needs that we had, and it was as I mentioned, a no-frills bond to take care of priority maintenance. And in this 2020 bond, I guess if you said what's the fourth most important thing, it's that whole priority maintenance package at over $59 million. We have 8 more roofs that need to be replaced. And the good news, the decision of the steering committee was to take care of priority maintenance for the next 4 to 5 years. So if we take care of all of these things that I'm mentioning, we will be positioned for,
you'll be in much better shape.
A good 4 to 5 years out. It's much like, if you're taking care of your home, you've got to put money set aside to take care of your roof or your plumbing, your electrical. That's what we're doing. We're trying to put money aside and take care of these much needed repairs. And
also one thing that we learned in, superintendent courses or school finance, 70-80% of our tax bills, I get couple of those as well, and they go to the district, are to pay for employee salaries and benefits. So over 80%. And the school districts are not able to, for example, I'm just going to I have $20 million here left, I'm going to build a new gym. It's not as easy as, we can just switch the funds from this account to this other account. No, they have to be used for very specific purposes. Right,
and that's in following along with that, the money that is collected through tax revenue that we get on our tax bills. That is operations. That's staff. That's ongoing operation. Now, I recognize there may be a small reserve for replacement in there somewhere for small line items, but not for building a school. And that's the important point, is BISD is not sitting on reserves that are large enough to tackle building a new campus or the degree of expansion and improvement that needs to be done right now. So this bond is vital.
That is correct. And Dr. Ibarra made a good point. There's a misconception that with bond money that sometimes we reallocate it for salary, and that's absolutely not allowed. This money would be dedicated for exactly what we're declaring, which is the rebuild, the renovations, the much-needed repairs. And you can buy resources, instructional resources. In fact, there's a whole line item in there for fine arts instruments. We want to be able to provide our students with an instrument, and many of what we currently have is beyond their useful life. So it's time to upgrade in that area as well.
Well, and likewise, I was going to make the point that the money that comes in through tax revenue is already budgeted. You can't just decide we're going to spend that on something else. So there are some, I guess, behind the scenes or under the hood administrative things that have to be done before you reallocate funds. You can't just decide you're going to spend money on something different. So
that's correct.
So presuming that this bond does pass and the new campus comes to fruition and all these improvements are made, how will this make Bryan ISD stand out among the other school districts in the area? How's that going to position us as far as quality of the facilities, the ability for executing the mission of educating the kids?
That's a great question. First, I believe all public schools are doing the best they can to meet the needs of their students, including Bryan ISD. But should this bond pass and we're able to take care of these needs that I've mentioned, if we can increase capacity with the new builds, we can take care of the facility conditions with remodels and repairs and replacements, we can buy the needed instructional resources, and we can do all of these things described, I believe it will add value to our community, because when you enhance your school district, it improves the community at large. Investing in a school district is investing in your community. I think it's a two-way street, because it will attract employers. It will attract families. We could have more students in our school because they trust the decisions we're making. So it's a complete win-win for everyone involved should the bond pass.
If I can say something,
Sure.
Our superintendent, Dr. Whitbeck, when she was here last week, 2 weeks ago again, I got the exact percentage. 80%, 84% of the budget is actually spent on staff and the rest on operations. So that's
the lion's share.
And the bond is definitely for separate long-term items.
Now, you've touched on the impact to the community, and that's a very important thing. So I guess I'd like to, if you could take that one step further, what would you say to somebody who does not have a child in school right now, who doesn't personally, their family doesn't personally benefit from Bryan Independent School District, or perhaps they do have kids and they've chosen to homeschool, or they're in a charter school, but what's in it for them?
Well, that's a great question. Even if you don't have kids in the school district, it does impact our community at large. I think if you were talking to the economic developers of Bryan, they would tell you that the success of the school district does impact the community at large. Again, it attracts employers. People contemplate bringing in their businesses here, enrolling their students, all based on the success of the district. So if you have quality facilities and adequate resources, and you're making a good effort to meet the needs of the kids in every way, then I think it just sends a real message that we can be trusted, and that we are a valued member, and that we're all in this together. So regardless of having any kids in the school district, there will be a positive impact should we be able to move forward and take care of our facilities and do the things that we need to do to meet the needs of our community.
How much is this going to increase taxes, this bond?
Well, I actually have an incredible answer for that. There will be no tax rate increase, which is almost...
The answer is zero.
It's zero. It's almost unheard of.
But it says on the ballot, though, that it is a tax increase.
That's unfortunate. That's a brand new rule that every public school district in the state of Texas has to follow now. Anytime there's a bond election, you have to declare that this is a tax increase. And I'm going to try to put that in layman's terms. I think that the thought process behind having to put that on the ballot is because when you're borrowing money, incurring debt, should something happen outside of our will with property, value increases, that's why they're making the the statement. But the situation in Bryan ISD is unique. And I guess in layman's terms, you could say that we have the best credit ratings possible. We have very aggressively, historically paid down our debt, and our ratings for that are incredible. And with the interest rates, it's just the perfect scenario right now because we could pass a $175 million bond and have no tax rate increase. So it's confusing and it's unfortunate.
It's boilerplate, as they say.
Yes.
It's language that was mandated. It has to be in there. But it does not apply to this bond election for Bryan Independent School District.
It does not apply. In fact,
zero tax rate increase.
In fact, even if we were lowering the tax rate, we would still be required to put that statement on the ballot. So regardless if you're lowering it, if it's not changing at all, or if there's any kind of increase, that language is required. So I can tell you every superintendent in the state of Texas right now is challenging the legislators to rethink that.
Well, good.
It's causing, honestly, it's causing a lot of confusion because usually there is a tax increase. But for us, there is not a tax rate increase.
Okay, so that's probably one of the biggest reasons why somebody would tend to not want to support this because they're concerned about their taxes going up. So we can take that off the table. No tax rate increase. Are there any other objections that you've heard from people who might not be inclined to support this?
Fortunately, we don't know of any concerted opposition right now. I feel like everyone has been very receptive. We've done a really great job of communicating the facts. I think everyone understands this was a methodical process developed by a steering committee comprised of lots of parents, students, teachers, staff members, community at large. And it's no frills. It's what's needed and it's what's best for our students and our staff. Capacity and facility repairs and replacement, new builds, instructional resources are all very justified.
All right. So I'll wrap up with if somebody is straddling the fence, they haven't voted yet, and they're thinking, I'm not really sure. What would you say to them? What would you say to sway them towards yes?
I would tell them to take a look at our resources. We actually have every single thing posted for this entire process on our Bryan ISD website. We have all of the meeting notes from when we had the steering meetings. We have the PowerPoints for all the presentations, all the bond facts. Everything that you need to make an informed decision is there for you, or they could reach out to any one of us and we could talk to them. And I would just implore them to think about the students in Bryan ISD. What we're asking for is, as I feel is very warranted. Again, it's to address the capacity issues, it's to address the facility conditions, it's to purchase much needed instructional resources, it's to address safety and security needs. So everything that's listed, I believe, is much needed and will add value to our school district, which will in turn impact our community in a very positive manner.
So we're doing this for the kids. We're doing it for the community.
Absolutely.
All right. Very good. Thank you very much, Ms. Ginger Carrabine, who is the Chief of Staff for Bryan Independent School District, and also Dr. Hugo Ibarra, who is here with us each and every Thursday. Please, if you have not already, go vote. Early voting is going on through tomorrow. And then, of course, next Tuesday, don't forget, everybody go vote. So tune in next Thursday. We'll have more news and information from the Bryan Independent School District.